more or less nonsense, because...
Do you reject the accusations, for example, from Amnesty International?
It's rubbish, absolute rubbish. Let me say something to that, because I think this kind of discussion, which has gone on for a very long time around, sounds a bit cynical in a sense. In fact, it's like the tragic situation of 1994 isn't considered even a violation of human rights. It has now gone into the background. Those who are responsible for it, those who are associated with it, are now talking about something else. According to them, the situation in Rwanda is that of human rights violation, even more than that tragic situation. I think that's what we are talking about. So,
well, just for example, there was Amnesty International wrote a report in the lead up to the 2017 election that talks about opposition politicians, journalists, human rights defenders being jailed, physically attacked, even killed. I think you're interested in forced into exile or silence. So I'm just interested in your idea of that assessment of your country.
Your views to the audience so that you influence them by
well, the European Union sees itself very much as an exporter of human rights and a defender of human rights.
So why can't you let me answer this?
I'm very interested in
Otherwise,
your answer.
you are going to ask and then answer yourself.
I'm very interested in your answer. I'm giving you some context on why I'm asking.
You're asking and giving answer at the same time. So
please tell me, what do you make of this assessment?
I think it's just ridiculous, because there is nothing like human rights minus these things we are talking about. What we are talking about in terms of development. These are human rights. Development, schools, education, health, and food security. And, you know, when you see now, the level of poverty has decreased almost by 60%. So these people, these human beings with improved lives and participating in that themselves to improve their own lives, gets lost in what the whole list you've been spelling out as if, you know, what is in Rwanda is really hell. In fact, forgetting the hell that we have gone through, that we stood against and sorted out when you were there just talking about more or less nonsense. Because
do you reject the accusations, for example, from Amnesty International?
Absolute rubbish.
You reject
Rwanda is completely different from what it was 25 years ago. In fact, maybe you need to be looking around in Europe. You are violating people's rights. When we have this problem of people being bundled and sent back to sink in the Mediterranean and so on, and so many people being mistreated in your own countries. Why don't you talk about your human rights and stop just offloading everything?
Well, this is a development conversation, so no, in the context of development.
You are not the one to determine what conversation or what points to raise in any conversation. You are asking questions, this is what I'm saying. You are asking questions and you are giving yourself answers.
So, apparently, the people of Rwanda have been complaining about the president, Paul Kagame. And so, in a particular interview, this interview that you've just watched, you can see that this white lady journalist is asking Paul Kagame the question of oppressing people in Rwanda, the pressure of people disappearing in Rwanda. Yes, people have been disappearing in Rwanda. However, Paul Kagame did not answer this question, and he looked really guilty if you pay keen attention. Paul Kagame answered this lady with another question. She said that you in your country, you don't have the rights to say that we are immoral and you are moral. You shouldn't be determining how we govern ourselves. That is what Paul Kagame meant. However, I'm just left with one question. Two wrongs don't make a right. Two wrongs don't make a right. Just because the European people are mistreating Africans or they're mistreating themselves in Europe does not make it right for Paul Kagame to mistreat Africans. In Africa, this interview is going to enlighten us about the position and the situation of Africans in Africa here and the situation of Africans in Europe. We are also going to learn that, indeed, human rights are human rights, despite which part of the world they coexist or they exist. Have a look.
Now, as a combined entity, the European Union is, in fact, the world's biggest single contributor to international development. It totaled over 74 billion euros last year. Now, in this programme today, I'm very pleased to be speaking to the man who's in charge of it all, if you will, the European Union's Development Commissioner, Neven Mimica. Hello, thanks for being with us.
Hello.
And we've also got with us in the studio today the President of Rwanda since the year 2000, Paul Kagame. Thank you for being with us.
Thank you.
Well, Commissioner Mimica, just in the context of development, how much is the European Union tracking on human rights? As I said, it's not explicitly one of the UN Sustainable Development Goals.
Yeah, one of the last 17 development goals is about peaceful societies, stable societies, which includes also the respect of all of human rights, of all of the democratic values, rules of law. So therefore, we really, as I tried to explain, we have this comprehensive approach where we would like to discuss, to talk to our partner countries on all levels of political dialogues. Yes, human rights. Respect of human rights is part of this political dialogue, but our development cooperation is a part of our overall partnership with each and every country. So it should be taken together, and we are doing it together in a dialogue, in a conversation, in a very open and clear interlinkage between the two aspects of.
And you really needed to stop this superiority complex nonsense about human rights. You think you are the only ones who respect human rights, or others it's about violating human rights. No, we've fought for human rights and freedoms of our people much better and more than anyone, including you people who keep talking about this nonsense. Where we have taken our country from and where it is now speaks for itself. The rest of the stories just comes from this complex. You know, these two worlds where there are people who know everything about human rights and all kinds of things, and another world where people are just people who don't know. But these are our human rights. It's not, when we respect the things we respect in our countries, it's not for you, it's not for anybody else, it's for ourselves.
Is it not
so
universal?
You don't sit there, yes, it is universal, but you don't sit there. If it is universal and you believe it, then you don't become the judge yourself. You don't start telling the others what to do, what they should not to do, or that what they are doing is not to your satisfaction. Who are you?
Well, I'm not sure if we're talking about me personally.
Well, you are the one actually raising these questions. So I think you better interpret it properly so that it is well understood.
Okay.
I could see you asking questions in a manner that you want to influence the ones listening to us. But that's not correct.
Okay. Yeah. I'm raising it once again in the context of the United Nations Development Goals.
No, United Nations is us. You see, United Nations is not something alien somewhere else. Yeah. It's actually us. We participate.
And the framework for this entire development.
And by the way, I had been leading the Millennium Development Goals before Sustainable Development Goals. I was the co-chair of that, with other leaders and some of the leaders in Europe. So you don't turn around, it's like you want...
So you believe that there should be scrutiny on human rights in Europe, in Africa,
No, I believe that you shouldn't be there belittling Africans or leaders of Africa who are trying to...
Oh, no, but the conversation about migration is a real conversation about human rights. So you believe that there are valid human rights concerns to be taken into account in this conversation?
Even in Europe, not in Africa.
Not in Africa?
In Europe. In Europe, not only in Africa.
President Kagame, your country has received a lot of foreign aid, particularly, of course, to help it move on from the 1994 genocide. It's obviously a big question, but what broadly has foreign development brought to Rwanda?
Foreign development has brought many things to Rwanda. In fact, from the time of humanitarian emergency situation, they filled that huge gap that was there with what could address those emergencies. And alongside that, and after we had gone through the emergency situation, a lot of assistance came in for our development. And development in this case is a responsibility of two sides. One is we ourselves, the recipient side, but also the donors. And we all come together to make sure that we address the poverty that is experienced, or was experienced in my country, but experienced across our continent. And on our side, we've really got to make sure that we put the necessary, the right infrastructure in place to actually utilize this assistance that comes our way to make the impact on the ground, to enable the country to grow its economy, to also make that growth inclusive, and continue the partnership between the recipient and the donor countries is extremely important, and we have to be looking at not just the volume of what is flowing, but also the quality of the outcomes.
Now, a couple of years ago, I think it was 2016, you said that it was time for your country to set a deadline to end its dependency on foreign aid. That's not happened yet. Rwanda is still receiving a lot of development funds. I think it was over $1 billion in 2016. Have you fixed a deadline as such?
Not really. I think sometimes people just misinterpret what is being said for various reasons. But the bottom line here for us is, can we utilize aid that is given to us properly to the point that we build the foundation necessary for our people to keep doing what they ought to do that falls within their aspirations and be able to stand on their own feet. I think the principal standard, as we know it, in our case, at least that is our ambition, is to make sure that as we get more aid, we keep needing less and less aid.
So it's a deadline that will fix itself, perhaps?
Really, yes, you can't really put a date on this and say, by this day, I will. No, but that it's a kind of ambition and a framework which you have to operate in, but it's not a switch on and off kind of situation.
Going back to you, President Kagame, Rwanda is often held up as an example of a country that, of course, partly through this development support, has seen greater economic growth, stability. However, recently some social indicators in Rwanda have been dropping off. For example, some World Bank data shows that secondary school enrollment is dropped down to 36%, and 38% of children aged under 5 are said to be in chronic malnutrition, which is among one of the highest levels in the world. Considering the favourable economic data and development that we've seen in Rwanda, how is this development backslide on those social indicators coming about?
Well, to begin with, it's not backsliding. It's not dropping of these numbers. It's actually that the situation has been bad from the beginning. And our situation has been such that almost everything is a priority or has been a priority. So we have had to do too many things at the same time. And in that case, we have made good progress in some sectors, and we have been slow on others. But the two areas that you have referred to are things we are now paying much attention to, and we want to make sure that we register significant progress on them in the next few years, in a short time. And already the mechanisms and the money and everybody is ready to go. We are actually working on it as we speak. So it's not that anything has gone down. No, it's that everything almost has been down. We're just trying to lift things up. And
there is, as we were saying, a question about focus on which areas of development, where to put money. Yeah. We know that Rwanda had a debt write-off in 2006. It has taken on quite a lot of debt since then, about 50% of GDP. And there are some major public investments based on this borrowed money that have been questioned, such as investments in Rwanda Air, which has a $50 million annual deficit, or perhaps a £30 million sponsorship deal with Arsenal Football Club for Visit Rwanda. Rwanda. Just in light of this sort of acknowledgement of the development needs in Rwanda, is your government perhaps due a rethink on where it's spending this borrowed money on these projects that perhaps it's hard to see where the benefits are for the people of Rwanda?
No, I think there are people who don't invest their time in reading what is happening. In Rwanda, there is no such a problem. One, I have to inform you that our borrowing capacity is actually still huge. It's not at 50%, as you say, it's actually about 32%. So we still have that gap of about 18%.
But it's not about how much the country's borrowing, it's about where the borrowed money is being put.
That's what I'm saying. But I'm starting with that because you are the one who brought up the issue of the debt. But going to specific areas, if you look at, for example, how much ground we have covered in ensuring that the country is food secure. It is for the first time in the life of our country that we are now food secure and have registered growth in the area of agriculture. That means being able to feed our people and even for export. That's one. If you look at how much we spend in our national budget on health, by the way, the health outcomes are the best in terms of where we have been and where we are. The most significant change in the health sector that you can talk about in the whole world. It's not just about Africa. That's one.
So you feel you're spending your money in the right places?
Absolutely. We are spending our money in the... So you see, people are confusing... I mean, if they should, for example, even with the money we put in Arsenal, football, and so on, I think people just... This is why I said people don't have time to think and relate things. We have actually registered benefits. If you look at how much money is coming in through tourism and relate with the, you know, what has been the attraction and by what means, actually this investment has superseded the money we put in by many factors, and the benefits are real. They are there. We can count numbers. We are now getting 1.3 actually now, tourists every year in Rwanda, from down like 400,000. So it has more than, or more or less tripled. So I don't know what people are talking about, but the results on the ground say completely different things. Even in education, where we still have to make a lot of improvement. In fact, the access that we have in Rwanda to education by our people is the highest in sub-Saharan Africa.
But improving secondary school enrollment, for example, is that a goal for you?
Now we are, absolutely. Now we are working on the quality of that education, because education is not just about access, it's also about quality. That's what we are working on. And we are putting money where that is going to be significantly improved.
We're looking at...
Yes, the West can sometimes be hypocritical about the issues in Africa. They'll try and make African leaders, or rather Africans, see them as the pivotal point, see them as the objective reference of morality. These people aren't moral, and they don't have the moral authority to question, to tell Africans to follow their ways, because their ways are morally corrupt. They are hypocritical, and that is the English name that we are going to give them. The US will talk about human rights. They'll tell the presidents of Africa how they are oppressing their people. The United States of America, for instance, is the country which goes around the world talking to other countries about human rights, this and that. Yes, human rights should be valued, but it shouldn't be that in your country human rights are not valued and in your neighbor's country is where you are going to enforce them. I think you should clean your house first. Clean your house first is when you come and clean my own house. If your house is dirty, I won't give the permission even to speak in my house because your house is dirty. Go and clean your house first. Journalists, and they were asking very, very provoking, disrespectful questions. They had no regard for human rights at all. The West will consider human rights when the West are involved. But when Africans are involved, they don't pay keen attention. If it is between Ukraine and Russia, that's a human right violation. Of course, it might be, I'm not being political, if it is Israel and Palestine, that's a human right because the West has been involved. But if it is a civil war in Africa, they don't even regard it at all as a human rights violation. Take, for instance, the genocide that took place in Rwanda in 1994. The West does not regard that as a human rights violation, the same way they regard what's happening in the West and what's happening at Middle East. This is hypocritical. This is very, very hypocritical. I personally think that human rights should be universal. The same human rights in USA should be universal with the same human rights in Africa. The blood of a black person should be the same as the blood of a white person in terms of the law. You see, it shouldn't be a human right when a president of Africa has denied Western interest into their country, and so they are trying to blame them. They are trying to bring the blame game of human rights and whatever. I also personally think that if Africans we want to execute our dictators, we should have our own international African court or the African criminal court like the one we have in Hague, Netherlands. African leaders who are perpetrators of violence should not be judged outside. Some of them might even escape. Some of them may be judged in not the right way. Some of them may just be condemned because they refused Western interests in their country. For some people, they deserve it. People like Charles Taylor of Liberia, that person was a dictator. People like Idi Amin of Uganda, he killed a lot of people. We have a number of these. International Criminal Court should be there. I have no doubt about it. Also, Africans, we should judge our own human rights offenders in our own ways, in our own laws, in the African way. You see, that is how I think Africans should be. And if Africans, we are fighting for African Union, if we are fighting for the unity of African countries as one, and the no visa campaign, Africans should learn to have their own legislation, international legislation or national legislation. How do we call countries within a continent? Is it international or national? Whichever way, countries within Africa should have their own legislative power for judgment of criminals. If person causes crime in Ghana, we should not fly them to The Hague. If somebody causes crime in Kenya, like the one we had in 2007, the post-election violence, they should not be flown to The Hague. They should be condemned in a country here in Africa. We should establish a headquarter where we condemn these bad people, these people who are offenders of human rights, because sometimes DRC people are fighting like every day. People are fighting in DRC. But it's not a human rights issue so big. When it becomes two white countries are fighting, it becomes a very big national news. It's as if we black people don't exist in this world, you know? We do exist, and they should recognize it. What I find these journalists doing is just very, very hypocritical, and this shows who they really are, if you get what I mean. They really don't value human lives in Africa. They value the gold mines, the diamond mines, the copper mines, the uranium mines, all the mines Africans have. Congo is facing very, very bad circumstances with civil wars and that. But the West is interested in this because if there is fight, there is disunity. If there is disunity, there is ease to loot. And that is what is happening in the Congo. Is it not a human right? Is it not? It is, according to me. Even not according to me. According to the standards of the law, it is a human rights violation going on in the Congo, but it is not regarded that way by the West. The genocide was not regarded that way by the West. Why? Why is that? Just ask yourself. Just sit down and ask yourself. It's tiring. It's tiring.
to be told to do the right things, and the person who is telling you to do the right things themselves are involved in even worse cases than you. If you know you have not sinned, be the first one to throw the stone. I'll have to end my video here, and thank you. Kindly do subscribe to the channel, give the video a super thanks, join my Patreon. It really helps me a lot to bring you videos. It motivates me, and also share the video. I'll really appreciate, and see you in the next one. And it's hard, choose one which works for you.